Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. We're kind of in that post-Switch 2 reveal hangover, so there isn't a ton going on, but we have some crumbs to pick up from this last week, and then we'll be doing something a little different as we shine a spotlight on a sequel that is coming out next week, and we'll be talking about why the first game was so incredible that you should care about this somewhat lesser-known sequel to Citizen Sleeper, which arrives on Switch in just 7 days. Joining me for that is my former colleague from Game Informer. It is Wesley LeBlanc. Wes, how's it going?
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm doing really good. It's quite cold here in Florida, which is probably nothing for you in Minnesota, but it's like 30 today, so I'm bundled up and freezing.
Hey, it is a scorching 8 degrees here right now, which is much better than the other day when I was at the gym. So when I go to the gym in the morning, I just throw on like a light jacket over top, like a windbreaker type of situation. Yeah. And then I'm just in shorts, right? Like I don't want to bring like the whole sweatpant situation or all that. Like, I don't know, just the fewer extra things that I have to put in a locker, the better is kind of my philosophy. It's just usually like my keys and my jacket. It was like -20 plus a wind chill the other morning. And it was the only time that I've been like, okay, maybe I needed sweatpants today. And
I can't register that. That seems not livable. I don't know.
I did a podcast with your fellow Floridian, Marcus Stewart, over on the All Things Nintendo Patreon page yesterday. And he was talking to me about like the coldness of Minnesota. And he's like, I don't even know how you would like, he was basically like, how do you even describe to someone like me from Florida how negative temperatures feel?
It doesn't. I think my friend yesterday, I was playing some Marvel Rivals with him, and he said it was like -15 or like feels like -15. And I was like, that's 45 degrees lower than what I'm experiencing. And if I add 45 degrees to 30, I'm at 75. And I know what 75 is. So like the contrast between that, it's just bewildering to me. I'm like, he said, if you go outside and the wind hits you, you just can't breathe. Like it's impossible.
Yeah, usually I park fairly far away from the gym. I don't know. I don't mind a walk. And like, unless there's a spot right up front, and then I'll take that. But like, usually I'll park way in the back. And I got there and it was even more crowded than I thought it was going to be. So I parked like way on the other side of the parking lot. And as I was walking in, my legs were like starting to like really hurt. That's how cold it was. Yeah. And then on my way out, the sweat on my face froze. That's how cold it was. And I got to this point where I'm walking to my car, and I like, you know, when you're walking up to the gym, you can see where the gym is in relation to where you are. I was parked so far back that I had to keep walking, and I was like, oh my God, what if my car isn't here? And my body started getting into like this fight or flight because it was so cold.
Yeah.
And I knew the car was there, but like I couldn't see it because it was like tucked behind an SUV. And I was just like starting to freak out a little bit, like subconsciously, because I didn't have like that end goal in clear sight. So I was like, okay, it's right here. Oh no, that's another car. Okay, I keep walking.
Yeah, I have 60 seconds before I freeze.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, this has been a fairly mild winter for us here up in Minnesota. But we're not here to talk about the weather, Wes, as much as Minnesotans love talking about the weather. We're going to be talking about the follow-up to one acclaimed indie title during the next segment. But we have some other indie games to talk about and a couple of higher profile AAA games as well. The first one, we're going to kick it off on a little bit of a sad note because another indie darling successor this week was unfortunately canceled. And that was Earthblade, which was the next game from Extremely OK Games, which if you're not familiar with that studio, it is the developers behind Celeste and Towerfall. So I read the blog that was put out by Maddie Thorson, who is the director of R&D at the studio, and they made it seem like the studio basically had a really rough period, centered a lot around the ownership of the Celeste IP. So on one side there was Noel Berry and Maddie, and then on the other side was Pedro Medeiros, who was, you know, it seemed like these three people were in this conflict, which ultimately resulted in Pedro leaving the team to work on his own game, which is called Neverway. And the blog, which was posted by Maddie, it said that once Pedro left, the team kind of looked at the work that they had done on Earthblade to that point, and they basically decided the game was not as far along as they wanted it to be, and it was having some other significant snags, and it just wasn't feeling good for the team. And here's a quote that Maddie wrote, said, quote, "Sure, working on one project for so long is bound to become a slog, but this feels like a deeper problem. Celeste's success applied pressure on us to deliver something bigger and better with Earthblade, and that pressure is a large part of why working on it has become so exhausting. Pedro isn't to blame for this. In fact, the split with him has given us the clarity to see that we have lost our way and the opportunity to admit defeat. I feel many ways about it, but one big feeling is undoubtedly relief." And then Maddie does go on to make extra sure to say that Pedro's not to blame for all of it, and you should check out his new project, Neverway. So there is a what's next section at the bottom of the blog post where they basically say that they are excited to wipe the slate clean, take all the lessons that they learned from Earthblade development into their next project. And they said that they admitted that they struggled to scale the team after the success of Celeste, but they're fine with that. They're fine to admit defeat in that regard, and they're excited to go back to their roots with kind of a smaller scale project after deciding that this larger scale game wasn't the right direction for the studio. So, Wes, you were Game Informer's chief news hound back at the end of the magazine's run there. What do you take away from this?
I mean, my initial reaction to it was like a selfish one where I'm just incredibly bummed because Celeste is one of my all-time favorite games, probably my top 10. And I've just been waiting and waiting for Earthblade. We're coming up on 7 years since our last game from that team.
We did get Celeste 64. I think that was just like a miniature game that came out last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was a free one on like itch.io, I think, or something like that. But yeah, I just have been waiting with bated breath to like see Earthblade. It was one of my more anticipated games. I thought it might be coming out this year, to be honest. So it really sucks to see that not only is it not far along, but it's now canceled. And then like taking a step back from my selfish gamer attitude, it's really just a bummer to see another indie team struggle with the success that comes from a breakout mainstream title like Celeste. It sucks to hear that it's probably, I hope that they're all still friends, but I don't know. I kind of get the read that the friendship is maybe not there anymore. And that sucks because it's over IP rights, which means it's over money. And yeah, it just sucks what money can do to friendships and a great team of developers. I'm glad they've found a way forward that seems amicable at least. But yeah, it's really just a bummer all around. And I think about other teams in the industry too. Hollow Knight, I'm sure that team is also feeling the same kind of pressures around success that the Celeste team feels. I forget
Logan
his name.
Logan Plant, our friend of the show over at the Toadstool Boardroom podcast and IGN Nintendo Voice Chat and all these different things. He's been on the show several times. He had a good Blue Sky post, said, "There's something to be said about the pressure indie devs who find huge success face when they're expected to follow it up with something bigger and better. Celeste into Earthblade, Hollow Knight into Silksong, Stardew Valley into Haunted Chocolatier, Undertale into Deltarune, Golf Story into Sports Story, and more." So then in the next post, he makes the distinction between games that either get canceled, are disappointing when they come out, or just take forever to come out.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's like a sentiment around when people talk about AAA gaming, which is going through its own issues right now, and dev times and costs rising and canceled projects and starting a game in 6 years ago and then the vision just not aligning 6 years later when the game comes out, like Concord or something, for example. But I think like when people talk about the stuff, they always kind of think that indies are there to save games in that regard. And I don't necessarily think that that's even true anymore. Maybe it wasn't always true. Sure, there's like the smaller titles that come out every year that we all love, but like the AAA indies, like the Celestes and the Earthblades and like Hollow Knight, Silksong, we can't necessarily rely on those to pad out years anymore because now they're also taking as long as AAA games and going through similar situations where money is a factor and time is a factor and scaling is tough. And I think it just speaks to the wider issue that like it's not just AAA games that are going through a tough time. It's not AA games. It's not indies. I think the games industry is just really hurting in a lot of ways right now. And I think it has to do with expectations and money and time spent developing games. And I don't really know what the solution is. I mean, I always fall back to that Sonic meme, the I want more games that cost less to make, that are ugly or something like that. And like, I do want that, but that's not going to happen. Like, it's games get bigger with sequels. And it sounds like this team was a victim to that. They even said like it's Earthblade was maybe too big for their britches and they need to go back to something smaller. So I wish them the best moving forward. I really hope that whatever's next works for them and feels right. But yeah, selfishly, it sucks that I've been waiting 7 years for their next game, and now I've probably got another couple years. It's the same with like other Blue Point this week. We learned that their game was canceled, and it's like I loved Demon Souls in 2020. I've been so excited to see what Blue Point's working on next, and now I don't even know if I'm going to see another Blue Point game this console generation. And it's kind of just how I feel about games. I'm almost done getting excited until they're in my hands, because it's just hard to trust what is going to come out with how rocky things are, indie, AAA, or otherwise.
Boy, you just like encapsulated my mantra over these past few months in just one sentence there. So very well done.
Thank you.
I'm the only hope that I have is that, you know, these games that are massively successful, whether it be a Celeste or a Hollow Knight or a Stardew Valley, are so successful that they are able to give them a bit of a runway. And if something like Earthblade does happen where it just doesn't feel right and they have to go back to the drawing board completely, it doesn't mean that the studio is in peril, because they've had this extremely successful project that preceded this. That is my most sincere hope for these games. And the same thing for, like, you know, Hollow Knight going into Silksong. I'm hopefully that Hollow Knight has sold so well and has had such a fan base form around it that it doesn't matter. It's not going to impact the studio, and there's not going to be layoffs because they've had to delay this game by however many years it's been now.
Yeah, it's tricky. I am glad, and I do think that like the Celeste team has enough money from Celeste and goodwill that like, yeah, they can't afford a canceled project and still move forward. But like, can any team afford more than like one screw up, or one screw up's not the right word, but like one failure or one canceled project? I don't know. We don't see that in AAA, so it's hard for me to believe that in the indie space that's going to happen. But yeah, I'm like you. I do hope that this team is able to get through these seemingly rocky waters.
For sure. We did talk about Hollow Knight during that little breakdown of the Earthblade news, and we got a little bit of a tease for Hollow Knight Silksong. We've been waiting for any kind of news from Team Cherry regarding Hollow Knight Silksong, and it's felt like ages since we've heard anything official. So we're going to take any crumb, anything that we can have them drop off the table and onto the floor. That is what we will take right now. And over on a social media website that will go unnamed, Matthew Griffin, who works marketing and publishing for Hollow Knight Silksong, responded to a fan asking if the game was still moving in the right direction, because there was a rumor going around, and they were like, oh, this actually isn't real. Like, this is not like the reason or the plan. Because I think there was like some rumor that they were going to launch in April or something like that. And they basically debunked that. And then somebody was like, well, can you at least tell us this game is real and like is actually going to come out one day? And in the the most modest of news items here, he said, yes, the game is real, progressing, and will release.
Sick.
But I'm certainly no game developer, but it must be a bit of a red flag when somebody connected with the game simply confirming that your game is real and will release is like a big news item, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's weird. Like, ideally you don't ever have to say that, because if you're saying that, that means people are worried about your game even being real. But I get it. I forget who, it might have been Hayes Madsen over at Inverse. I think he was talking about how like people played Silksong at E3 maybe in 2019, and like the way games journo is so like layoffs happen all the time, that like we might not have, like, people might forget that it's real, that people played it. Like, if those journalists aren't in the industry anymore, yeah, who knows what this game is? But like, some people have seen it, some have played it, it's real to them. But gosh, if you aren't familiar with that, if you've only been following the game for the past couple years, I mean, it's hard to believe it's real other than finding tweets like this where it's like the dev is saying it's real.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page here. The game was announced in 2019. So literally before coronavirus existed, this
Yeah.
game was announced. Not only then, but like before that, it was announced as DLC for the original Hollow Knight, and then it grew big enough that in February of 2019, a full year before the pandemic started, we got confirmation that they're going to shift it from being a DLC for the original game to a full standalone sequel. And then it's just been like on and off updates ever since then.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can't watch any indie direct or any Nintendo direct or an Xbox showcase for that matter without the chat just being like Silksong, Silksong, Silksong. Are we going to get Silksong? And it obviously does not happen. I think another thing too that kind of goes into this conversation with Silksong and Earthblade and all these other highly anticipated indies is like they need time to work on the game. The pressure continues to build, especially like in a Silksong situation where people are just fiending for any kind of information.
Become like a mythical game at this point.
Yeah. And as that pressure builds, now you feel the game has to be, it really has to live up to these standards that keep rising. And so you're taking longer to make the game because you're like, it's got to be perfect. And then it's this circle that eats itself. And God, yeah. Like, imagine if Silksong comes out and it's just like a 7.
Yeah.
People will like, that would, I mean, I love 7s. 7s are fine. I'd be fine with that. But like with, yeah, like you mentioned, the mythical status of this game, this team probably feels that like it has to be a 10, which is funny because Hollow Knight is not even a 10. Hollow Knight's really great, but it's like there was room for improvement. And now I think people just have this wild standard of Silksong because of how mythical and fabled it is. That dev team's probably, the stress is just compounding. I can't imagine. I don't know. Like, I wonder if devs sometimes are aiming for like success, but maybe not that much success. They want like somewhere in the middle. Maybe there's like a threshold that's too high where it gets too tricky with sequels and follow-ups.
I want to say that before she left Game Informer, Jill Grote, who's over at the Indie Informer and has been on this show multiple times, I want to say she wrote a feature where she interviewed a bunch of high-profile indie developers who had a game blow up and just completely unexpected, because I don't know that any indie dev really thinks that like the first project of theirs that blows up will blow up. I think they all like are like, well, it'd be cool if it blew up, but then like the expectations are always kind of like, well, we're just going to be like in a sea of indies, even though we have a very good game, or they're confident that there's an audience for the game. I don't think anybody ever expects that their game like is going to blow up to like Stardew Valley levels or Hollow Knight levels. But she interviewed them on like how it affects their kind of like their development process going forward. And it was just fascinating to read, like kind of like get like that insight into the psyches of these developers who were just like found not overnight success, because obviously these games take a ton of work and they intentionally created these games, but they went from being like this lesser known indie developer to suddenly being like, you know, one of the most acclaimed developers of whatever year that game came out. And that's got to be just daunting to be like, okay, well now how do I follow this up? Like think about like, you know, every music artist who bursts onto the scene and their first hit single or first hit record, if you want to go back before the streaming age, and then it's like, all right, how do we follow that up? And it's a lot of times you see them fall short of it.
Yeah, like she did write that piece. I remember because she specifically talked to the Stardew Valley dev concerned ape maybe or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I think about like Chapel Rome this year had a meteoric rise in like pop music, and that was not even like a new album. It was an album that came out last year, but you know, with Coachella and all these other things, she blew up. And yeah, I think about like her next album has to hit, like it has to be a stunner, like a top tier album. And yeah, it just, I don't know. I guess no matter what industry you're in, your follow-up just has pressure that is always going to be tough, but such is the life of a creative, I suppose.
See, that really showcased the differences in not only our age, but our musical tastes, because the place that I went with like the debut albums and the follow-ups were like Boston and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, that's fair.
Although, but you know, to be fair, Boston, I think their debut album came out a full 15 years before I was born. So it's not like I'm saying I was as old as their debut album, but Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, I believe, came out the same year I was born.
That's a
1987.
tough follow-up, arguably a follow-up they were not able to ever make happen. I know that what was that one in 2004? Chinese
Chinese
Democracy.
Democracy.
Yeah.
Well,
There
that
was like
that is inarguably their. I mean, maybe there's. We don't need to get too deep into the Guns N' Roses discography. The
yeah
Spaghetti Incident, I think, is their inarguably their worst album.
yeah.
Chinese Democracy has kind of the Hollow Knight Silksong effect, where it's like it was just in development for so long. And I remember it came out the same year. It wasn't 2004. I think it was
I think
20.
I was gonna say 2004,
I want to
but
say
that
it was
doesn't.
2011 or 12 because I think it came out around the time that Duke Nukem Forever came out, because I think I wrote a feature about how like both music and video games were getting these high profile games that took forever. Let's see
Yeah.
here.
There's like
Now that
2 songs on Chinese
it's
Democracy I like.
2008
There
was
was one in
Chinese
Rock
Democracy.
Band, I think. Yeah, that makes sense actually. 2008 because Rock Band 1 or 2 maybe had a had that main song, that main single from that record.
Okay, so Duke Nukem Forever came out in 2011, and Chinese Democracy came out in 2008. But yeah, I did write a feature back then for the website I was writing for at the time about like the weight of expectations for no matter what, like in terms of like games, albums, whatever that take forever and then eventually come out, and like how hard it is to live up to those expectations because they just build. And I
Yeah.
think that I'm sure that there's other factors as to why Hollow Knight Silksong is taking so long, but ultimately I think that the expectations have to play a role in that at some point where they're
Oh,
like, okay,
yeah.
people have been waiting for so long, we can't not stick the landing.
Absolutely. I think so, yeah.
All right, so a reminder to everyone that you are listening to the All Things Nintendo podcast. You can support the show by going to Patreon and searching for All Things Nintendo. There, for $5 a month, you can get early and ad-free episodes of this very show, priority access to Q&A and interactive episodes, and access to the All Things Nintendo community Discord, where we talk everything from video games to TV shows, music, even folks' thoughts on the latest episode of the podcast. There's also a TeePublic store that has various merchandise related to the show. All right, Wes, we have a little bit of Pokemon news to chat about.
Yeah.
I believe I saw you posting about this over on Blue Sky.
Yes.
Pokemon trading card game Pocket. We have a couple of new things coming to the game next week. First and foremost, the trading feature is arriving next week. Trades can be done between friends. Cards must be of the same rarity, and you can only trade 1 to 4 diamond and 1 star cards from the Genetic Apex, which was that first booster pack or first expansion, and then Mythical Island. Those are the only things that can be tradable at launch. They said they're going to have more available in the future, and that in order to do trades, you will need to use trade hourglasses and trade tokens. And that feature is arriving in the game on January 29th, which is Wednesday of next week. And then on top of that, they announced a new expansion called Space-Time Smackdown, which includes 2 new kinds of booster packs, which with Dialga and Palkia on those covers. And then Space-Time Smackdown adds new illustrations that are exclusive to the Pokemon trading card game Pocket. And this expansion includes Pokemon like Lucario, Turtwig, Chimchar, Piplup, and the Pokemon that
Cynthia.
are on the covers of them as well, Dialga and Palkia. I'm assuming Darkrai, because it's also going to add new binder and display board covers starring Dialga, Palkia, and Darkrai. Wes, I'm at the point where both Genetic Apex and Mythical Island booster packs are almost exclusively duplicates. So I am very glad that the trading is coming in, but at the same time, I don't know that too many of the cards that I'm missing will be obtainable through the rarities that are available at launch.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's also going to be hard for me to communicate with my friends on who has the exact card that I'm looking for, unless there's some sort of like trade block functionality. Like people can put cards up on like their profiles of like, hey, I'm looking for these cards, and you can like see if they have your card that you're looking for. I don't know if there's a way to like browse somebody's collection. We'll learn a lot more on Wednesday, obviously, because that's when it goes into effect. But honestly, I'm much more excited about the new booster packs coming to the game than I am for the trading.
Yeah, me too. The trading, I've been excited for trading. I kind of don't really like how they're implementing it. I did not expect hourglasses to be a part of the trading. I should have, because that's, it's a mobile game and it's free and that's how they make their money. But like, that seems a little ridiculous to me. Trading with friends only kind of sucks. The restrictions is weird. Like, why does it matter if it's? I don't even like that they have to be the same rarity. Like, if you have two, for example, I have one card in Mythical Island I need, and it's the Gyarados EX. If you have two of them and you're willing to part ways with one, and you don't care what I give you in return, why does that matter? That's very frustrating to me, as someone who was looking forward to that. I also think it would be cool if there was a system where I could just search what I need and find someone who's like, I'll trade this for this card. And then it's like, okay, I've got it. I don't, whatever. Seems very complicated and a little restrictive. But like you, I'm mostly more excited about the Space Time Smackdown, which is a terrible name compared to the other ones, in my opinion. Sounds very not cool. But
I'm
yeah, I'm
currently
excited.
looking
I've got
at Gyarados EX, and it is a 4-diamond card, so you would be able to obtain that.
perfect. And I've got like 4 cards left in Genetic Apex, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, it's I'm excited for the new pack. I have 268 hourglasses, pack hourglasses, which will get me, I think I'm getting close to 3 10-pack opens, so 30 packs off the rip, which I'm very excited about. Very excited to see how it changes the meta, because as much as I love battling in the game, I like how streamlined it is, I like how it works. A lot of people really piss me off because they just play the same meta decks. And I am someone who has not played the meta decks. I actually enjoy just building decks that I think are fun instead of the freaking Mewtwo, Gardevoir, or whatever it is. And I just hate when I start a match, someone puts down a Mewtwo immediately. I know exactly where it's going. And I'm like, I don't know. I get it. Get your wins, do it, have fun however you want. But I like the experimentation of building decks, and I'm excited that we're about to get a whole slew of cards to change up that meta, hopefully.
Yeah. I think that it's at the point where it's just so many duplicates every time I open a pack. It's like a shock when I don't get a duplicate, when it's like one of the cards in the pack is like something new. Like I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't even expect that. I just open them because like, I don't. Do you upgrade your cards at all with like
No.
the points?
I did it one time, and I'm like, I forget about that. That's even an option in the game, which is weird because I loved it in Marvel Snap, but I think Marvel Snap was like way cooler about it.
Yeah.
This is like kind of, I don't even notice when other people have it, or maybe most people aren't doing it. When you open packs, do you tilt them to look and see what you got before you go through them, or do you just go right through them?
Oh no, I just go right through them. I think I may have tilted once, and I'm just like, I don't know. I like having not having the surprise spoiled. Though
Yeah.
I've never gotten a God pack, which I've seen
Me
people
either.
posting all over social media, and I'm just like, every time I open it and it's like a special illustration, I'm like, oh, is this the time? And then I swipe and it's just like like a Magikarp, not like special illustration.
Brusquish, or whatever that stupid fish is.
Yeah.
I don't even believe the God packs are real. There's no way. I've opened so many packs, and everyone's luck is better than mine. Everyone gets the heads on a coin toss a million times more than me. I never get to go second in matches. Everyone's luck is apparently better than mine, and I'm one of the worst players and card poolers apparently. It very much frustrates me, but I still play every day, multiple times a day. When that pack notification goes off, I rip it open. I have like a routine because I get a pack usually when I wake up in the morning. I have one, so while I'm brushing my teeth, I'll get one midday that I'll just open randomly, and then right around midnight, which is when I'm like getting ready for bed and brushing my teeth, I usually get one. So like every time I'm brushing my teeth twice a day, I'm opening a pack as well. It's like a little routine for me.
So it's timed well with your daily routine. So that
Exactly.
there you go.
Yeah, it's just a part of the routine. Like my wife knows, like, hey, don't talk to me right now. I'm opening packs. We're doing some important business in here. Yeah, it's a good time. I'm very excited for the new pack though. It's time. I think they've done a good job with, right when I'm starting to get bored, they have a new expansion come out. And
Oh my God. I was just thinking about this because when Mythical Island came out, I subscribed to the $10 like a month pass that gives you an extra booster pack every day. And I was just like, oh, maybe I unsubscribe to it like tomorrow. And then they announced that it's coming. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll keep it because I want that extra booster pack every day. I feel like they've paced it just perfectly to make it so that you keep that $10 subscription, which by the way, when compared to the other games that I play on my phone, Marvel Snap is a thing of the past for me now, but Marvel Strike Force is the game that I've been playing, I think, for 7 years now. For all their battle passes, they want $80 a month.
That is ridiculous. ridiculous.
I haven't bought any of them in a long time. I mean, I don't spend very much money on that game at all, but I used to, like back when it was like a good or at least better game than it is now. Like I used to spend an okay amount of money. I was never like dropping a ton of money or anything like that, but just money here and there. And at least Pokemon TCG Pocket only wants $10 a month from you, which is, I mean, I know there's other things you can do with real money, like if you want to like buy a bunch of gold or something like that. But I haven't really had an urge to stock up on gold or anything like that. Like it's a relatively unintrusive like microtransaction scheme. It's just like, oh yeah, you can drop $10 a month if you want to get an extra, I guess on average 30 packs a month.
I had the premium pass during the free trial or whatever when the game launched, but I haven't had it since. Just because I like the little prizes they give you, and the extra pack is cool, but like I don't know, I'm really just here to like I don't even think it's like that good of a game. Like there's a lot I wish they would fix. I could definitely use some new music. I've had it muted for a long time now.
Who doesn't play mobile games muted?
Fair. Well, I would like some songs, some fun songs, especially the Pokemon, library of music. But yeah, like I'm just here to open packs and see new cards, and I think I'm at the point now where my brain just needs the serotonin boost, which is not healthy because like I'm just I don't want to say addicted because like I'm not addicted to that game. It's not the way we use addicted, but like I'm a little obsessed with it and probably need to be less obsessed with it.
Yeah, dependent on it maybe.
Yes,
like you're dependent on the serotonin boost.
Yeah, like why am I checking my phone at midnight when I get a notification and brushing my teeth while ripping open a pack of Pokemon cards? Also, digital Pokemon cards that mean nothing when I could be out there becoming a millionaire on prismatic evolutions or whatever. That's what everybody's doing these days.
Yeah, of course. That came out right as I stopped like getting all of like the pre-orders of like the booster boxes and everything, and I was just like, Game Informer closed down. I got to cut some stuff out, and of course I stopped right before the one that everybody lost their minds over.
Yeah, there's like cards that I think are like over $1,000 raw if you pull them, which is nuts. And you go get it graded, and it's Pokemon has a grip on society in a way that continues to grow somehow.
It's wild. I mean, I've told this story before, but like I remember in like 2000 or so, I had like 3 first edition holographic Charizards, and I sold all of them for like $35 a pop because I was like, oh, the fad's going away. Like Pokemon's not as popular as it once was, and I'd rather get something for it than just have them be like useless pieces of cardboard the way like a lot of my baseball cards are now. And man, miscalculation on my part.
Yeah. My brother-in-law traded he doesn't know if it's a first edition like the Charizard, but it was a Charizard holographic from way back in the day, so probably worth some money, for a just regular Gengar, because he really liked Gengar when he was in elementary school, and he kicks himself all the time because of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. But Wes, we do have a bit more in the world of Pokemon to talk about. It's not really game related, but the Pokemon European International Championships happen next month, and there will be a Pokemon Center pop-up shop to correspond with the event. Unfortunately, you need to reserve your shopping time, and sadly for everyone who would want to attend but didn't know about it until just about now, all the reservation slots were completely filled pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
You and I have spent a good amount of time in the Pokemon centers in Japan, both together and separately. And not to rub this in the faces of anyone who couldn't get a spot at the London pop-up, but where do the Pokemon centers rank in terms of like your favorite stores you've ever visited?
They're pretty high up there. They're like actual destinations for me when I go to Japan. Like I seek as many out as I can. I mean, we did on our last trip together in July. Like they are amazing, and each one, at least in Japan, has like a different specialty. Like the one in where is it? There's one somewhere that's like mostly focused on plushies, and they just have almost every gen, every plush of every Pokemon.
Was that the Skytree one?
No, that one is.
They had a lot of plushies there too.
It's not the Shibuya one or the Skytree one. It's in like a different part
It's a
of town.
Sunrise something. Is
I
it the
think it's like
Sunrise Center?
a DX one or something. It's in like a
Yeah.
shopping mall center thing.
Oh my god. That was the first one I ever went to, and
Mhm.
it is
It's the one where
almost
the Pokemon
impossible to
Cafe's
find.
at. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
You go into like a random elevator and it's like there's like a Froakie on the door or something. But yeah, they're really cool. If you're a Pokemon fan, every time I go, I spend $50 minimum. I come home with plushies for my nieces and nephews. I buy like little clothes, little trinkets. I mean, all around my house, I've got this. This is a Lizardon coaster, which is
Oh,
cool
nice.
because, I mean, just
Charizard's
looking
Japanese
around
name.
here, yeah, I come home like I just have so much in this house that is from Pokemon centers. They're top tier stores.
They
I don't know
are.
how the pop up will be, but like if it's anything, if it's half as cool as the actual stores, it's going to be a good time for those
And I
people.
think is it the Pokemon Center is opening in San Francisco in March? Is that right, or is it
Is it a
Nintendo that
Pokemon
is?
center? I think it might be a Nintendo
Okay,
store.
I think you're right. I think it is a Nintendo store that's opening. But yeah, it's up there with the Nintendo stores. I would say the Pokemon Center might actually be better
I
than the
agree.
Nintendo
Yeah.
stores, but it depends on which one you go to. Like the Nintendo Tokyo, I think blows a lot of the Pokemon centers away.
Hmm.
But like if you go to Nintendo New York, I think it's
It's
not
kind of just
quite
like
as good.
it's like a game store that just has cool memorabilia.
Yeah, but the Nintendo Tokyo store is phenomenal, and it's
Yeah.
right next to a Pokemon Center, which is not the best Pokemon Center, so it looks even worse by contrast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you have a chance to go to this Pokemon London pop up, I would absolutely take it. I don't know if there's going to be any lottery or anything like that. The Pokemon Company did put out a statement they're going to look into how they allow for registration for these types of things because these got scooped up so fast. So if they do open up like more slots or something, it does run from February 20th to the 23rd. So keep your eyes open if you're going to be in the area. Wes, as someone who runs a Nintendo focused podcast, I have talked a lot about Astrobot, which, as everybody listening to this show knows, is not on any kind of Nintendo platform. But the thing I always say is that it's so rare that anyone not called Nintendo makes a 3D platformer as good as Astrobot. And as it would turn out, the former president of Nintendo of America and former All Things Nintendo guest, Reggie Fils-Aime, at least concurs to an extent. And I saw this over on Nintendo Life. While Reggie was presenting an award at the New York Game Awards this week, he said, quote, "I have to admit it, Astrobot almost outdid Nintendo at its own game." There's some mild laughter that happened after that because it is kind of funny to hear Reggie, the former like one of the faces of Nintendo for so many years, say that like, oh yeah, they almost beat Nintendo with this game.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you think very highly of Astrobot as well as somebody who is a 3D Mario fan. If you were to rank all the 3D Mario games and include Astrobot in that, where do you think
Mhm.
Astrobot would land in the ranking?
Well, obviously you got Super Mario 3D World at the top.
I know that's your favorite.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but
Um,
I'm a fellow lover of Mario 3D World, so
yeah.
I'll give you the pass.
Um, Galaxy Galaxy 1 and 2 kind of go together for me, but I don't know, I guess Galaxy 2 if I have to pick one. Um, and then honestly probably Astrobot,
Oh
which would
wow.
put it above others like Super Mario Sunshine, which I don't really think is a competition. 64, it's tough cuz like 64 was like a goat for a reason and did something really special back then, but like if you played them side by side, which I did play
Mhm.
64 like 2 years ago when they did that 3D All-Star collection, I'd rather play Astrobot. So yeah, I think Astrobot's probably in top 3.
What about Odyssey?
Oh, I forgot about Odyssey. Um Shoot. I think I'll probably it's like a tie. I think I'd still prefer Astrobot only because I'm a bigger fan of the more enclosed linear kind of levels where Odyssey feels like a bit wider than Astrobot for my preference. But gosh, that's tough. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean Odyssey would be at the top of my 3D Mario ranking just because it's my favorite 3D platformer ever.
Yeah.
After that, though, it's Astrobot's in the running for a lot of those spots. Like maybe I would put 3D World and 64 above it, and 64 would only just be because of like the impact that it had in like
Yeah.
basically establishing the 3D platformer genre. But yeah, I mean, I Galaxy 1 might be above Astrobot for me. It's right in the mix though.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just an interesting thought that I had when Reggie said that. I was like, okay, yeah, what games did Team Asobi outdo Nintendo at its own game? If you know you have Reggie out here saying that, even though it may have been a little tongue in cheek, like saying almost, like
Yeah.
I mean, it just got me thinking. So
I mean, the
not
fact
really
that
a new story.
Astrobot's even in the conversation is like so impressive for that team. Um,
Hmm.
it's how I felt about Liza P. That's in the conversation for like top Souls likes for me, and I think just the fact that it is even in that conversation is really impressive in this day and age.
Agreed. Wes, this is a news story that kind of got lost in the shuffle last week since the episode was focused on the Switch 2 reveal and then Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. But a game that hit at the tail end of last year is finally fully functional on the Switch. Um, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind was released by Digital Eclipse, and it's a pretty solid game. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Shredder's Revenge if you're looking at like a retro IP with a retro side-scrolling beat 'em up. I think that Shredder's Revenge is kind of a level above, but it's still a serviceable and maybe one of the better, if not the best, Power Rangers game ever. But it launched with no online functionality, and the Switch version was actually the last one to get it. But as of January 15th, the studio put out an update that added online co op to the Switch version, meaning that all the platforms now have it. And then the studio also pointed out that it has additional plans for all platforms that are currently in development that they hope to share in the coming weeks. Have you played this game at all? Have you checked it out?
No, I haven't. It looks fun, but I was not the biggest Power Rangers guy, and I just never got around to playing the game. But it looks cool.
Yeah, it is a very fun game. I don't regret the time that I've spent with it at all, but I think that it's a lot more enticing now that the multiplayer is there because a lot of the times I'd be playing it and I'd be like, man, this feels kind of empty. Like you'd see all the Power
Hmm.
Rangers like together, and then it's just like, okay, now it's just the one guy going off or one woman going off and fighting all these characters. It's like I wish that there was even a way to add like bots to fight
Yeah,
alongside you or something because it feels like it's missing something if you're just playing single player, which I never really got the sense of with Shredder's Revenge, and I think maybe that is kind of why it feels a little bit different. But either way, it's now available
yeah.
across all platforms, and if you want to check it out, you can buy it on Switch or any other major platform. You know, I love talking Sega. One of the biggest news makers as of late. We have four very quick news stories from Sega here. First up, out of nowhere, Sega has launched a new account system similar to what we've seen with like EA and Ubisoft, where you get rewards across various platforms where you play games. You want to venture a guess at what this is called, Wes? Have you heard about this?
I heard about it, but I don't know the name. Um, is it Sega Heroes?
It is Sega Account.
Oh, sick! Even better. Cool, cool, cool.
The kings of creativity. Actually, they are very creative, but for some reason, the most generic name you could possibly come up with for a service like this. I went in there. I created my account. I linked my various online profiles. So it's like PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and Steam are available right now. And then you can. It says like Epic Game Store is coming soon. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot you can do. You can also, I mean, oddly enough, you can also link your Fantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis account, but only in Japan.
Hmm.
And it gives you rewards. It says it's going to give you rewards for having this account that are exclusive to account holders. And the only one they've announced so far might appeal to you, Wes. It is a Kazuma Kiryu outfit for Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
So you can get his like iconic gray suit. But I assume
Yeah.
they'll have more rewards in the future. I mean, it's kind of like one of those like, okay, no harm, no foul. I've linked all of my online accounts, so if I play like, you know, the next Sonic game on PlayStation, or I play like, you know, Super Monkey Ball on Switch, presumably all of those games will have some like cosmetic reward. And one
Yeah.
of the things that I think might end up over there is the second news item. There is the novelty skins that we've seen in recent Sonic games. So at the launch of Sonic Frontiers, like if you subscribe to their newsletter, you would get like the soap shoes from Sonic Adventure 2 in Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Superstars had like the Lego skin and had like Amy had like an IHOP outfit, I think, that you could get if you went to like the
Sick.
IHOP pop-up. And then at Sonic X Shadow Generation, Sega had a Sonic Adventure skin that was available. I think you got like the digital deluxe version, and then a Sonic Jam skin if you signed up for the newsletter, which unfortunately that promotion has since been discontinued. So now you can't get it anywhere. However, they just put it up on the digital storefronts for anyone who wants it for free.
Oh, nice.
Which, by the way, if you haven't seen the Sonic Jam character model, it's one of the more charming 3D character models that we've seen for Sonic. So just go to the eShop or digital storefront or whatever platform you played Sonic X Shadow Generations to claim that skin. Then you can swap it out during your gameplay. But I would imagine that that is going to be something that is going to be like just as a part of Sega account going forward, instead of having you to like sign up for a newsletter or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. Can't wait to sign up for another thing with an email.
Yeah, and then not saying this is going to happen specifically with this one, but the inevitable. Our database has been hacked, and all of your identity has been, all your information has been stolen, and is now on
Add
the
it to
dark
the
web.
list.
Yep.
Cool. Don't even
I've
care.
kind of every time I see that now, I'm just like, oh, okay, another one.
Yeah.
Like it used to be alarming, and now it says a lot that now whenever that happens, I'm just like, oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Another day.
The next news item from Sega is that Sonic the Hedgehog 3 now available on digital streaming services like Amazon and Apple TV. But you have to either rent it for $20 or buy it for $25. So at that price, if you want to watch it now, you might as well just buy it.
Yeah.
Did you see that movie in theaters?
I haven't yet. No, I've been trying to set up a time with my nephew to go see it because that's kind of like a tradition we have. But he was sick, then I was sick. Now he's back in school, busy times. But yeah, I still want to try to go see it in theaters with him.
Well, maybe now you can just have him over and set up the home theater.
True. It might be cheaper than taking him to the movies, honestly.
I mean, if you're going to have to get him like even one snack, I think that $25 is going to be less expensive than 2 tickets and a snack.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I usually get him popcorn and an icy, so that's like $40 right there.
You could go to 7-Eleven and get popcorn and an icy and still save money
and
on this
candy,
deal.
And let him get whatever he wants. Yeah.
And then not really news that I want to dwell too much on, but right before we started recording, we did get the latest sales numbers of Sonic X Shadow Generations, which has officially passed 2 million units sold, which is very good.
Nice.
And then Sega also confirmed that Sonic 3 has grossed $425 million in the box office worldwide, which passes the franchise record that Sonic 2 set with 405 million. So 20 million beyond what Sonic 2 did. So theoretically, that means the franchise is very healthy right now and doing well. So that's the big takeaway I have there. Wes, one last news item here. If you missed last week's episode and you want to hear Kyle, Hilliard, and I react to the breakdown of the 2-minute and 21-second Nintendo Switch 2 reveal trailer over the course of more than 30 minutes, you can go listen to last week's show. But there was a fun tidbit that surfaced via friends of the show, Kit and Krista. They surfaced a Nintendo Minute episode. They went back when they worked with Nintendo. They did a show called Nintendo Minute, and they would have guests on and talk about like the new games that were coming out for Nintendo. And around the time of the launch of the Switch 1, they did an episode with Nintendo's Yoshiaki Koizumi, who was one of the main people behind the Nintendo Switch, and he was talking about the Joy-Cons attaching to the Switch via rails, like it does for the Switch 1. And it turns out that Koizumi and his team actually had the idea of magnetic Joy-Cons with the first Switch, but they couldn't get it to work in a way that they stayed connected in a secure manner. And they ultimately decided to go with the more secure rail system that we ended up getting. But it seems like they stuck with this idea and figured out how to make it work with, the locking mechanism that we've seen where you have to push a button to release it. How much do you trust this either magnetic or locking system over the rail system, Wes? Because I know some folks, I think Kyle Hilliard included, had a problem with the rail system staying in place in like after you took the Joy-Cons off enough times, it started becoming so loose that they would just slide right off. Do you think that the way that they've shown the Switch 2 attaching its Joy-Cons will be more secure?
Yeah, I think so. I forget the type of magnets that people are speculating they use, but like there are some pretty strong magnets out there. And I think the button releases like electromagnetivity or something to like kind of
Mm.
shut off the magnet. So it'll be, if they have that kind of technology happening, then I'm pretty sure these magnets are going to be like way more secure and stronger than the rail system. I never really had an issue with the rail system. I didn't really take my Joy-Cons off my Switch too often though. Um, but I do think the rail system's pretty flimsy, and I'm hoping these magnets are a little more rigid and sturdy. I kind of hate that like anytime I'm holding the Switch, I feel like I can kind of just jingle it around, and I feel that there's like a little bit of misconnection between the Joy-Con and the Switch. So I'm hoping these magnets like really feel locked in. I'd love for it to not feel like I could take them off when using them.
And before we break, what was your overall reaction to the Switch 2 reveal?
Um, cool. It was exactly what I thought it would be. It's exactly what I wanted. I had a hard time getting over the dampening that is waiting till April for more news. I was pretty disappointed by that. I think it's a weird decision. It's a long time, especially because I thought we might be getting the Switch 2 in March or April. But yeah, so that was kind of like my big takeaway for the day was a little bit of disappointment in having to wait so long. It seems, I don't know, 2-3 months is a long time to wait. I would have loved something sooner, or at least a game announcement or tease. Other than that, I mean, they teased the Mario Kart, but yeah, the actual console I'm excited for. It's exactly what I wanted: bigger, stronger, classier Switch. I'm here for it.
And here's the thing, though. I just looked up the release date of the reveal trailer of the first Switch, and it was in October of 2016. Yeah. We didn't get like a more robust look at this thing until January of 2017. So that's almost the same amount of time. And then you'll recall it came out 2 months later. And I have been predicting that this is coming out mid-June. And the reason for that is if you follow the same timeline, October, we got our first look at Switch 1. January, we got our like live streamed, like here are a bunch of games that are coming to the Switch 1 at launch and like, in the launch window. And then in March, it came out. And in that in-between period, we got a bunch of hands-on events across the world. And that's exactly what Nintendo is doing immediately following the Switch 2 Direct that's coming in April. And if you look at the dates that are announced so far, it ends right in the beginning of June. So I think that mid-June is my prediction, which sucks for a lot of us who cover the games industry because that's going to be right around Summer Game Fest. I think a lot of folks who are going to be reviewing games are going to be at Summer Game Fest with their Switch 2s in hand, reviewing launch titles.
People love going to SGF and hanging out. I bet there's going to be a lot of people who are like, please don't make me go this year. Like I don't want to go this year. Let me be home with my Switch, especially depending on the launch game. Like imagine a 3D Mario or something at launch. Yeah, I think I'd rather be home on my couch with my Switch than anywhere else.
Or what if this Mario Kart rumor comes true and it is 24-player Mario Kart and people with hotel rooms just be like, hey, come on over. We're playing 24-player Mario Kart in my hotel.
That'd be sick.
That's actually the place that people go instead of the JW Marriott.
Or just bring it to the JW Marriott.
Oh my God.
Getting drinks playing Mario Kart.
It's going to be like one of those Sonic 3 movie situations where it's like you could just buy a full bottle of whatever alcohol that you want instead of having to go buy one singular drink at the JW Marriott.
$20.
God, if you're lucky, it's $20.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm still very excited about the Switch 2. I don't think they're going to have these hands-on events and then make people wait after playing the Switch 2 at these events for more than like a month or so.
Yeah.
Maybe the early ones I'll have to wait for 2 months, but I think what they're wanting to do is get people's hands on these things and then immediately be like, okay, I can't wait to play this at my house. Can I pre-order it today? And they're going to be like, well, funny you should ask. You can pre-order it today and we'll ship it to you in 2 months or whatever. And I don't think that it would be absurd and so non-Nintendo like for it to be like, yep, it comes out this November.
Yeah.
I
I
think
agree.
that that's too long of a timeline at that point, especially since Nintendo has consistently shown a shorter and shorter promotional cycle. Like Mario Wonder, we didn't know about until the end of June of 2023, and then it came out in October. And there's a few exceptions here and there, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and stuff like that. We knew about for several years before they finally came out. But yeah, I think that Nintendo is going to try to get this out this summer, and it's going to dominate the headlines until GTA 6 comes out.
Yeah, I hope so. Imagine GTA 6 came out in June too. That'd
Imagine
be
it comes
fun.
out in June on Switch too.
Yeah,
I don't
true.
think that's going to happen, but
No, I don't think so.
but Wes, we are going to take our first break of this episode, and when we return, we will be getting into why Citizen Sleeper was such a gem and why the listeners to this show should care about Citizen Sleeper 2. We will be right back. We are back, and I suspect it will be pretty quiet in the upcoming months, given that we're kind of in limbo while we wait for Nintendo Switch 2. We will have our fair share of speculation in the upcoming weeks, but on this episode, I actually wanted to talk about a game I imagine has snuck up on quite a few folks. Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector is set to arrive on Switch and every other major platform next week. I have not played either Citizen Sleeper game, and Wes, you haven't played Citizen Sleeper 2 yet, so rather than giving a preview of Citizen Sleeper 2 through the lens of hands-on impressions as we typically do on the show, I actually just wanted to get out of your way and give you an opportunity to gush about the first Citizen Sleeper game, which came out in 2022. I know it's one of your favorite games in a long time, and we will get into that in a moment. But first, can you give me a rundown of what exactly Citizen Sleeper is?
Yeah, so Citizen Sleeper is a sci-fi tabletop RPG that is a video game. So you are a sleeper, which is a basically like a robot, for lack of better word. Um, your counterpart, your human counterpart back home, has uploaded their mind into the cloud, whatever you want to call it. Your mind has been put into a sleeper body to work for a corporation. It's very similar to, not super similar, but it's kind of reminiscent of Severance on Apple TV, if you've watched that, where you kind of you're giving away part of you so that you don't have to worry about work. You've got this sleeper in space who's going to go work and make money and do all the parts about life that suck. But you and Citizen Sleeper have escaped, and you are on the run from this mega corporation, and you have made your way to this space station. It's called the Eye, and you're just trying to survive and not die and escape this corporation who is sending a bounty hunter after you and trying their best to get you back into their reign. Which is a fascinating premise. It's really great. You're as a citizen, as a sleeper, your body is also malfunctioning and corrupt, and you need to find a way to get some medication to keep it running. So not only are you trying to escape the shackles of this mega corporation, but you're trying to escape the shackles of degradation and losing yourself basically to what's going on. It's kind of like a big metaphor for, I think, a disability is kind of the way it's described, or maybe like a terminal cancer, for example, or something where it's like in your mind you're there, but like your body is just not keeping up, and it's falling apart, and it's about like what that means and what that struggle is like and what you'll do to survive. Very great writing within, but the gameplay is all based on dice. So you roll your dice every day, and it's a pretty complex system. It's kind of hard to explain over just talking. It took me a while to you just need to get in there and do it. But you basically roll these dice every day, and based on what you roll, it's how you make decisions. So if you've got a good dice, which would be like a 6 or a 5, that means your chances of completing an action are going to be higher. So if you really need to secure medication from this person, if that's the task or the objective, you would use a 5 or a 6 die, because that means your chances of completing that are higher. And if you've got a 1 die, that's not great. So maybe you'll go wasted on gambling or getting food or something like that. And every day is dictated by your dice that you roll. And so you really have to like make hard decisions based on your dice, because you can't really waste time. You're a pressure cooker of a sleeper, because your body's falling apart. There's a bounty hunter after you. This corporation's trying to find you. And so the game starts off extremely stressful, like really, really stressful. It's tough. It feels like you're getting your butt kicked because you are, but over time you make friends with NPCs and allies, um, and you start to get better dice, and your dice rolls are better, and you're able to relax a little bit. Maybe this bounty hunter is not as scary. Maybe this corporation's not right on your back, and you've got time to go and learn more about the citizens elsewhere on this space station. And you start to get involved with all these side stories that kind of branch and go out through all these different places. And it's just fascinating. Like there is not a single word wasted. And it's like reading a book. I want to say it's like 60,000 words or something like that. I talked to the developer, Gareth Damian Martin, Jump Over the Age or Fellow Traveler. I forget. One is the publisher, one's the developer. And they told me that I think Citizen Sleeper 2 has like 120,000 words or something, which is double what Citizen Sleeper 1 had. So it's a lot of reading, and it's almost like a visual novel in that sense, and it kind of looks like a visual novel, but it's definitely a tabletop RPG. Like you're rolling your dice, and then you're making decisions, and then you're reading about what happens and what plays out based on the decisions you've made. And it's one of those games where you can't go wrong. Like you can fail and you can really, really mess up, but you'll still get a really interesting story out of it. I think it's kind of like Baldur's Gate 3, where being perfect is boring. Like see what happens when you mix things up, when you experiment and see where that takes you. And there's just so many good stories in Citizen Sleeper, that like it just sucked me up. I finished it in like a weekend, I think. And it's like my only regret at Game Informer is I gave it a 9 because it's relatively new, and I just wasn't confident in myself to give it a 10, but like I would go back and give it a 10 if I could. And I told the developer that as well. It would have been my game of the year in 2022 if not for Elden Ring, which the developer understood. I told them that, and they were like, "Yeah, I get that." But yeah, and it's also right up my alley for the visual style and like the musical style. I like it's very neon, cyberpunk, sci-fi. Lots of pinks, lots of purples, and the music is so good. It's like very chill, lo-fi, cyberpunkish music. It's kind of what I wish Cyberpunk 2077 was, whereas that game is more of like a 90s feel of cyberpunk. This is like a 2020s feel. It kind of feels like the type of lo-fi I listen to when I'm writing. And it's just great. The characters are fantastic. The decisions you make are awesome. It's one of those games where there's a bunch of endings, and I chose the one that I chose, and I had no interest in seeing what the other ones were because I felt so attached to my Citizen Sleeper that it was like, this is their story. Like I'm not interested in going and replaying and seeing what else I could have done. Like my Citizen Sleeper lived this life, and that's what I want it to be.
Do you typically go and like for games that have multiple endings, do you typically look up like what the other endings were?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll go watch YouTube videos. I'll save scum. Like I'll save right before a big decision and see what happens. But with Citizen Sleeper, I just played it all the way through without doing any of that because I was just really in it. It was kind of like reading a good book where I know I was making decisions and I was kind of dictating where the story was, but I just wanted to know what was happening next, and I couldn't put it down. And I think it's only like 6 to 10 hours too. Like there's still plenty of time to play it before the sequel comes out if you're listening now. And
Yeah,
I highly
it does say
recommend it.
on how long to beat, it is 7 hours for main story, 10 hours for main plus sides, and 13 hours for completionist.
Yeah, it's a
So
perfect size game.
you compared it to Baldur's Gate 3, and it is it sounds similar in a lot of ways to Baldur's Gate 3, but the length
Not in
definitely not.
length. Yeah, I think Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3 took me like 45 hours. But yeah, it's a game that like I would recommend to basically anybody, but it is kind of like a trust call. Like it's a weird game, and it's probably different from anything you've played, especially someone who, if you're not familiar with like tabletop RPG gaming, then you might be a little bit out of your comfort zone because it is very rooted in being a board game. I think the developer in a recent interview said something along the lines of like, yeah, after Citizen Sleeper 2, I don't want to make games anymore. Like I've been guiding myself towards a tabletop RPG, and I think I'm ready. Like
Oh
gaming
wow.
games were the practice foundations, and now they're ready to move on to a tabletop.
That's
So like,
an interesting path there, because like, you know, you would
right?
almost think like they would start the other way around, but then you have to think like you have, in order to do like physical physical like merchandise, I would imagine that ends up having a much higher investment level than just
Yeah.
creating virtual assets, right? So and then
Yeah, that's
distributing it virtual instead of having to ship it all out to everybody.
it's probably scarier too, because like because it's physical, it's kind of more set in stone. You can't just wake up one day and be like, I have a much better idea. I mean, you can, but if you spent the money on these physical items and once that game's out in the world, that's what the game is. You can't just push an update or add DLC or something and change it up. I mean, you can do expansions, but yeah, I would recommend it to anybody. It's going to be weird if you haven't played tabletop RPGs, but the tutorials are great and it flows really well, and you will find yourself sucked in. It is very stressful though, like very, very, very stressful. The time constraints are probably the most intense I've ever felt in a game.
Oh
And it's not
wow.
like literally counting down on the screen, like hurry up and press a button, 10 seconds left. But it is, you're like counting down the days, and this bounty hunter is about to get you, and I need to make the right decision, but I have 50 different choices I could make. What's going to be the right one? And it's fascinating watching it all play out. I love Citizen Sleeper.
Trying to think of other games that have stressful timers, and the one that immediately comes to mind is Majora's Mask. Is Have you played Majora's Mask? Is this like comparable to the stress that you feel with that?
No, it's like nowhere near that. This feels, it has a little bit more urgency because of the dice and because every action you make is dictated by dice.
Mm.
Um, and so sometimes it's out of your hands. Whereas in, Majora's Mask is your skill on a controller often. This is like you might wake up and you have a bad set of dice on a very critical day, and you've got to roll with it and figure out what you can do with these bad dice and see. And bad dice rolls and bad decisions will like hurt you and make it harder the next day, and so on, and or hurt the NPCs you're working with, or ruin a storyline. So like there's a ton of urgency with like the dice mechanic. It's very unique to Citizen Sleeper.
Can I just say that as somebody who is currently playing through a game that you and I went out to Tokyo together to see, Metaphor Refantasio, I'm nearing the end of that game. It does kind of make me miss the dice roll being like a thing that you actually see, a visualized thing on your screen.
Yeah.
After playing Baldur's Gate 3, I do need to go back. I'll probably just start a new save file at this point because I got distracted by so many other games. I made it through the first act and then I was like, okay, I need to play other stuff.
Yeah.
Ever since playing that game, whenever I'm doing like an RPG that does have like those behind the scenes dice rolls, I am always like, where did it go wrong? Why did that attack not hit? And I
Yeah.
would love to see like an option for that for games that are very obviously doing RNG, like to see that. But I understand that it's a very obvious and intentional aesthetic choice for actually surfacing like a physical or a visual dice roll. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is so satisfying to see that. As somebody who has played a lot of Baldur's Gate 3, like I imagine it's just as satisfying with the Citizen Sleeper series.
Yeah, it's a little different because you're not actually like rolling the dice and watching them tip over. You
Hmm.
just kind of wake up every day and here's the dice you're given,
Okay.
which is a little. It's even more stressful because you really don't feel like you have control over the dice. You just have to make do with what you have, which ties into the themes of the game. You don't, you don't have control over what your body is doing necessarily, the way that it's falling apart, or what these NPCs are doing, or what this megacorp is doing to get you. You wake up every day, it's a new day. You have to make do with what you've got in front of you, and I think that's something that like kind of follows the entire narrative. And the story. Speaking of story, is like it is one of my favorites in games. I think sometimes game stories get a little caught up trying to be like movies or something, for example, and I love those types of games. No hate to them, but this really does feel like a huge novel. It's like reading Dune or something, where you're so there's so much happening and you're so engrossed with this world that it's hard not to feel completely immersed in it, and to know who these characters are and feel for their stories, and want to make the right decision for them. And I mean, I even found myself like sacrificing my own objectives because I wanted to help this little girl on the station and her dad escape or something like that, or help this person open up a restaurant or a bar. And um, it's the type of narrative that I think more games could benefit from attempting to do. Not necessarily the length, but just uh, this game is not interested in being, a film in a game. It's its own unique system and one of the best RPGs because of it.
All right, let's shift a little bit of focus to Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector, which is the reason we're talking about this game that came out in 2022 that you love so much, Wes. You have not played the final version, but you have spoken to the developer about Citizen Sleeper 2. I'm assuming you've kept up with all the various news beats as this game that I am certain you are extremely highly anticipating
Yes,
coming
game
out.
of the year 2025.
So what does Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector bring to the table that, either iterates on what Citizen Sleeper 1 did or, just does something completely different?
So I played about 2 hours of it last year and spoke to the developer. Notably, it's the stress is immediate. Like I started the demo and it was just like, boom, I'm stressing out. You're this new sleeper. Things are going, I won't say what, because the game's coming out so soon, but like things are going bad. How are you going to fix it? You're just immediately thrown into the mix. And there's a lot of new mechanics going on. Probably the biggest is the ability to go to like other star. I don't know if it's star system. I don't think it's other universes or galaxies. I think it's just like nearby star systems to take on contracts, which will earn you money, which is or currency, which is a big part of the game's systems. And so now on top of your objectives, you have contracts thrown in, which are these like mini stories, and they're separate from the main hub station. And within those contracts are very stressful situations. The one I did was like turning off a bomb inside an abandoned space station so that I could loot the station. And so I'm getting bite-sized nuggets of the stress that happens throughout the larger game. And now it's this little package time bomb. And I'm highlighting the stress a lot, but it's fun. It's a good stress. It's the kind of stress I want when I'm rolling dice and playing like a board game. And if I was with friends playing this game, I'd be hooting and hollering on the table and freaking out over dice rolls. So it's a good stress. But the team did a really good job of like taking what makes the wider narrative of Citizen Sleeper so fun and putting it into these little compact stories that'll take you 15, 20 minutes. And I'm really excited to see how far those go, because I only did one and I think there's going to be a ton of them. Naturally, it's a sequel, so it is bigger in a lot of ways. There's just more places to visit. There's, like I said, double the words in the game, which means more story and characters and NPCs. There are like, I forget the word. It's not classes, but there's like new classes for your sleeper basically, and each of them has like, there's glitched dice now, which can harm a run greatly or greatly benefit what you're doing. It's kind of like an evolution. Like if you've played the first Citizen Sleeper, all the evolutions you could picture in your head are what's happening here in 2. And I'm really excited. I'm most excited about the story because I do think the story of Citizen Sleeper is one of my favorites.
Do you know if this is a continuation of that first story, or is this kind of like an anthology type standalone story?
I don't think it's like an anthology standalone, because I believe there are some connections, but you are playing a new sleepers. I do think the developer recommends playing the first game. I can't remember if that's just purely mechanically or if that's because of narrative, but like the second one, you could probably jump into the second one and be fine, because you're not playing your character from the first game. Like my character from the first game would not be able to do what's happening in this game, which is cool. I think it respects the legacy of what characters chose in one and doesn't canonize an event. So yeah, you could theoretically jump into 2, but like people should play the first one, even if they're excited for 2, just because the first one still holds up and is still great. But yeah, I think 2 is just going to be a classic sequel where it's doing everything bigger, more efficient, more optimized, more fun, more stressful. And I just can't wait to see what awaits in it. I have not played the final product yet. I wish I did. I would love to be playing it. I'm sure if I was still a Game Informer, I would be. But alas, I would also recommend people to go read my preview for Citizen Sleeper 2 in my interview, but that does not exist either. So, yeah.
Now, it's funny that we talk about this game, and the first topic we talked about on this episode was indie developers finding success, putting out a great product, a popular product, and then struggling for that follow-up. You don't seem like you've had any indication that this game might have that kind of sophomore slump side to it. Is there
No,
any indication at all?
I don't think so. No, I think this is I have all signs, including what I played and what I talked to the dev about and what other people have played now as we get closer to launch. Signs point to it being a better game, which is wild to me because I think the first game is basically perfect. And I don't know. I wish in hindsight I'd had talked to the developer about that and expectations and how they managed that, because I don't think Citizen Sleeper was a Celeste breakout or a Hollow Knight breakout, but it was a big game in 2022. And the fact that the sequel is out not even 3 years later is really exciting to me. It's there's probably some lessons to be learned from whatever they're doing at that studio. And I believe, I don't want to call it a solo dev, like Gareth isn't the only developer there, but I believe he's the only they're the only full-time developer. And I think that they like have some contracting help and stuff like that. So yeah, whatever they're doing. I mean, I will say it's mostly a visual novel with some dice rolled in. You're just kind of mechanically, you're just selecting inputs on a UI versus something like Hollow Knight or whatever Earthblade was going to be, where you're like actually controlling a character and moving around and stuff. Not to say that one's easier than the other, but like I do think that this type of game lends itself better to getting a game out faster. But yeah, I have I have zero worries about Citizen Sleeper 2. I just want January 31st to be here already.
Yeah, as you indicated, we will find out very soon if they avoid that sophomore slump, because it arrives on Switch and every other major platform. January 31st, it'll set you back $25. The first game is available now and costs $20. Wes, you gave it a 9 out of 10 when you reviewed for Game Informer, even though you retroactively wish you could go back and give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. It's also added, either coming soon or is now on Game Pass, and it's on PS Plus, one of the tiers, the extra or essential or whatever, as well. So a lot of places to play it for free, in quotation.
Well, go check out Citizen Sleeper and Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector if that sounds up your alley. We are going to take our final break of this episode, and when we get back, we're going to do eShop Gem of the Week and Definitive Ranking. We will be right back. We are back, and it's time for Definitive Ranking, a recurring segment where we take a Nintendo topic and give our own personal top 5 lists. Since I just basically handed the last segment over to you so you could gush about Citizen Sleeper West, today I want to get your top 5 sci-fi games of all time. So you know the drill. Start at 5, count it down to 1. Give me a sentence or two about each.
Number 5, Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh.
It's a fun open world RPG. I was fortunate enough to not run into any of the problems it had at launch, so I didn't experience that game that a lot of people did in 2020. And I had a really great time. Did you play it
at launch?
I did, yeah. You know what it was? Is I had a PS5 at launch.
Oh.
So I was able to avoid the disastrous PS4. And on PS5, I didn't have any bugs or anything. Like I was legitimately shocked at what people were experiencing with the game, which I know I got lucky. But yeah, it's just a good ass RPG. It's got Keanu Reeves in it as a dude in your ear. The story is very fun and heartfelt, and has all the good things I love about Cyberpunk in it. And it's a game I return to quite often. It's just fun. And they have Run the Jewels in the soundtrack. And they also did Cyberpunk Edge Runners because of it, which is one of my all-time favorite shows. 10 episodes of perfection.
Wow.
Love it.
All right, number 4.
Ooh, number 4, I'm going to go Citizen Sleeper, which we just talked about, so I don't need to expound on it too much, but I love that game. More people should play it. I think as more time passes, it'll continue to maybe rise up in my ranks. But it's a goodie. Play it. It's great.
All right.
Number 3. I'm going to go with Returnal, which I think is the best game on PS5. I think it's the best PS5 exclusive, perhaps would be a more descriptive way to say that. I adore Returnal. I think it's one of the best roguelikes that it probably would be if Hades didn't exist. It's fascinating. It's engrossing. It's beautiful. It uses the DualSense really well. I could not put it down. There's also a fight that is basically just Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, which is so sick. I love Returnal, and I cannot wait to see what Housemarque does next. And I know it's not Returnal 2 because they already said they're not doing a sequel, but I still hope that they're lying and that it is Returnal 2.
Hmm.
That game rules.
I am shocked to
Number
see you have that on your list, and I thought that I was being clever by putting it on my list, but
Oh, no.
all
That's
right.
it's one of my favorite games this generation. Honestly, I need to do some soul searching because it might be like number 1.
Wow.
Number 2 is BioShock, which
Okay.
is, I mean, I don't know what can I say about BioShock that hasn't been said. It's one of the greatest games of all time. It's one of the games that opened me up to games being more than just like what I experienced as a kid on NES and SNES and stuff like that. Like it was one of the first games where I just felt so immersed, and I was like, I can't believe games can do this. And it still remains one of my favorite. I love the series. I love all the games. I eagerly await Judas from Ken Levine's studio. I can't wait to see what BioShock 4 is. I think BioShock just rips. And number 1, if you're familiar with me at all, is no surprise. That is Final Fantasy 13, which is a sci-fi Final Fantasy game. I just love it. I adore it. It's the first game I remember buying with real money. It's got it's got the best soundtrack in games. It's a great time. Don't listen to the haters. Just play it. And remember that when everybody comes around and loves Final Fantasy 13, old Wesley was always on that train. And I know you were as well, Brian. I know you weren't a hater
I wasn't a
back in the
hater. It's
day.
not. It's far from my favorite Final Fantasy, but I do enjoy some Final Fantasy
Yeah,
13.
that's fair. I don't. It's definitely not the best Final Fantasy, but it's my favorite. And for that, it's one of my. It's probably my favorite game of all time. So for that reason, it only makes sense that it's number 1.
All right. Well, there you go. There's a little bit of crossover, not too much. But number 5 is one of the ones that crosses over. It's Returnal. I think it
Yeah,
is one of the coolest implementations of like the roguelike style, the time loop style, like that style of storytelling. It's the gameplay is so tight and the graphics are so impressive, especially when you
yeah.
consider like what was Housemarque's game before this?
It was that.
God, I can't
Uh,
remember the name.
I'm thinking of the one that was launched on PS4, but I forgot they came out with another one that was like a 2D side-scrolling arcade shoot 'em up thing.
Yes. Let's see. It was Super Stardust. No.
No,
Okay.
that was their.
That was old. Next Machina.
I think that was it.
There was Super Stardust Ultra that they did. Resogun was the one I was thinking of.
Resogun was the launch PS4. Next Machina was the last game before Returnal, I
Oh,
believe.
Matterfall as well.
Oh, Matterfall. That might actually be. Yeah. I need to go
I
back
didn't
and play
even
these games.
I didn't even remember Matterfall. But yeah, they've put out so many games. Returnal, I feel like, is head and shoulders above everything else they've ever done. And Resogun
Oh
is a
yeah.
fantastic game. And Super Stardust Ultra is a very good game as well.
The lineage from those games to Returnal is so impressive too. The fact that Returnal is still an arcade game, really at its core, is so awesome.
Absolutely. It's just like, wow, this is the same studio that did these games.
Yeah.
So yeah, Returnal, well deserving of being on this list. Number 4 for me, I've talked about how this is the game that got me into wanting to review video games, and that is Fallout 3.
Mm.
The Fallout franchise has a very special place in my heart because I got into reviewing video games when I bought Fallout 3 at a liquidation sale at my local Circuit City, and just absolutely fell in love with it to the point that I wanted to write about how much I loved it. So I still think fondly about that first time that I played Fallout 3 and just like felt like infinite possibilities were at my fingertips.
Is it your favorite Fallout?
It is. I know a lot
Nice.
of people say New Vegas. A lot of people, some people have even come around on 4. I think 4 got too much hate at launch. I understand why people thought like, oh, this is just like more Fallout. And for me, it was just like, yeah, what's wrong with
Yeah.
more Fallout?
It's been a while. Sounds great.
Mm-hmm. Number 3, another very formative game for me, that is Halo 2.
Oh my
And
god, I didn't even think about Halo. Ugh, that's a mistake. Whoops.
like just the implementation of Xbox Live into this
Yeah.
franchise, it's I had a great time playing this in college with my friends. Like it hit just at the right moment for me to play this in my dorms up until like 3 in the morning every single night, and having an absolute blast every single time we logged on. And it's one of those like old school like things where it's like you're like, oh, one time you went outside to play with your friends for the last time, and you didn't know it was the last time. And
Yeah.
that's how I feel about like all the times that I played Halo 2 with my friends. And
I
it's like,
just texted a buddy. Well, he actually texted me because there's rumors of the Master Chief Collection coming to PS5, and me and him are both, we like hunting for platinum trophies. And we were like, if this happens, if this comes to PS5, we're buying Mountain Dew, we're buying snacks, and we're playing through the campaigns on Legendary in one night. And I'm like, dude, that sounds like
God.
a dream. Haven't done it since I was like 15, but God, I would love to relive that.
LAN party.
Yeah.
And there are, I mean, we didn't talk about this in any of the news segments, but there are rumors that the Master Chief Collection is also coming to Switch too. But you know, there's
That'd be
just
so sick.
only smoke at this point, no fire to those rumors. So it would be cool, and I would not put it past them for putting it on there. Number 2 for me, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Ooh, okay.
Horizon Forbidden West didn't really hit the same way that Horizon Zero Dawn did, even though I think that Horizon Forbidden West did a lot to further the franchise. I think that Horizon Zero Dawn just hit at the right time where it felt like the pinnacle of that style of open world. And then literally a week later, Breath of the Wild turned it on its head and made it so that, like, you know, this is a different type of expectation that I have for open world games. But Horizon Zero Dawn's open world felt so good in the moment. I love the combat and like the setting of the traps and trying to stealthily like sneak around the robot dinosaurs, and the way the story unfolds was really, really enthralling for me. So I want to go back and play the remake that they just did of Horizon Zero Dawn, because the visuals just look incredible based on what I've seen, and it looks great in the first place.
Yeah, Horizon, especially on PC now, is the game. And it was on PS4 and now PS5. It's the game that, like, if my dad comes over, he doesn't really play games, but he likes to watch and see how they've advanced. I show him Horizon and he's just like, oh my God, I can't believe that's what games look like now. And I'm like, yeah.
Is that how your dad talks?
Like, no, actually, I don't know why I gave him that voice, but
sounds like a ship captain out to sea. Yeah, suddenly it made sense why you like pirate games.
Yeah,
is your dad a captain of a ship?
He was in the Navy on ships before, so not a captain, but he did a bunch of deployments on the ships before.
Well, now your love of pirate games makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Number 1 for me, this was a no-brainer. Mass Effect 2.
Oh, I forgot about Mass Effect as well. Dang.
To be fair, I think I sprung this list on you like 30 minutes before we recorded. So
I mean, these are the ones that came into my head. So it's like, those are the ones in my heart. But Mass Effect 2 is such a good, that's a good get.
For the longest time, I was stubborn about it, and I would just say Mass Effect Trilogy. But I don't know, like it feels a little bit like a cop-out to say that. But it is like one seamless adventure from Mass Effect 1 all the way to the end of Mass Effect 3. Mm-hmm. And it feels weird to single out one individual entry when it is such like a singular arc of this one character and this one story. But I guess Mass Effect 2 you'd have to pinpoint as the high watermark of that trilogy. The way that game ends, all the incredible action that takes place throughout it.
Suicide Mission, one of the best finales of all time.
Oh yeah, the way your choices actually matter. Yeah. The implementation of the Elusive Man feels so good in that. The way they flip not only the universe, but Commander Shepard's story on its head, the introduction of so many great characters, the return of other characters that you loved from the first one. It was just like a perfect game for me in that moment. And it really made me have to like pause on what my game of the year was that year, because I believe Red Dead Redemption 1 came out that same year.
2007?
Which was, I want to say 2010.
This would be 2010. This would be 2010. Yeah, Red Dead was 2010.
That was a tough year to decide a game of the year, because Red Dead Redemption is probably my favorite Rockstar game, the first Red Dead Redemption. I love all of the Grand Theft Autos since 3, and I love Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, but Red Dead Redemption 1 just was so different and everything. But it was only challenged by Mass Effect 2, and now that I look at it, I think Mass Effect 2 is my favorite game from 2010, and quite frankly, one of my favorite games of all time. So easily my favorite sci-fi game of all time.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. I've been actually thinking about playing ever after finishing Veilguard last year. I'm like, maybe I could go through. I played through the first one with the Legendary Edition, which I liked, but like the first one never hit super hard for me. I like it, but it's a little older and different. 2 is the one where I'm like, oh, I need to get to it. And surprise, I've actually never beaten 3. So I still owe
Whoa.
myself to go back and finish those that trilogy.
You need to. Oh my god. And I mean, I'm not one to talk because I've never finished a Metal Gear Solid game or anything like
Me
that.
either.
Um but yeah, man, Mass Effect 3, I understand that there's people who don't like it just because of like the last 30 minutes of that game,
Yeah.
but they've fixed a lot of that, and I would say that it's probably the best playing Mass Effect game. Um but yeah.
I was such a like back then I wasn't in the industry or even thinking about it. I was just listening to the podcasts and reading the articles, and like I was really ingrained in all that stuff. So people were like, I mean, if you'll remember, like Mass Effect 3 was like a turning point for the industry in a way where like it got dogged on so much the devs like patched in a new ending and patched in new stuff to like repair what fans didn't like, which is
Mhm.
like an infamous moment in gaming history. And like, yeah, reading and hearing about all this, I'll just not play the game. I'll play something else. What year was that? 2012? I'm sure I
Yeah.
was playing like
I think it was March
Skyrim or
6th,
a
2012 if
Batman
I'm
game or something like that, or
Yeah.
Halo 4.
Well, I mean, 2011 was a huge year. That was when the game of the year argument was between Portal 2, Batman Arkham City, and Skyrim. Those were
Oh,
like the
that's
three
nuts.
contenders. That was a
Yeah.
good year. And then
Yeah.
2012, it was March that Mass Effect 3 came out. So you would be forgiven for playing catch up still in 2011.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you like BioWare games, you should absolutely go play the Legendary Trilogy. I have also been considering that because apparently we are getting a new Mass Effect game in the near future. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully. Now
I'm
that
trying to avoid RPGs this year because last year I sunk so much time into them.
yeah,
And now my backlog is currently Metaphor Refantasio. I got back into Tears of the Kingdom, which isn't like an RPG necessarily, but like I'm just sucked back into that world. Uh, Tons of RPGs coming out. And yeah, now I'm going to add Mass Effect to the list, and I'm going to play 6 games this year.
and you have a Yakuza game right around the corner that is all about pirates,
Yes.
which I
Yeah.
know you're going to play.
And Monster Hunter. And there's just,
Yep.
yeah, it's right now January has been a very thankfully boring month in terms of releases. But like Citizen Sleeper kicks off what is going to be an onslaught for February, March, and who knows how long.
Yeah, I've been using this month to get through Metaphor finally,
Yeah.
and I'm very grateful that I am because that game is incredible.
Yeah.
One of the best RPGs I've played in a long time.
I need to get back to it. I took a break recently because now I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom, but it had just started to ramp up. I think I'm at like 30 hours.
Mm. Well, yeah, get through Tears of the Kingdom because the finale of that game is also very fun.
Yeah, it's annoying because I told myself I was going to wait for Switch 2 because it'll be backwards compatible and probably run better, but I was just feeling it, and I'm going to follow my heart, and now I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom. I'm going to beat it, and they're going to be like, Tears of the Kingdom runs at 120 frames per second on Switch 2. It's a much better experience.
That would be wild if they could
Yeah.
achieve that. I don't think they will,
I don't
but
think so.
maybe 60 frames is a little bit more realistic.
Yeah.
But Wes, that brings us to the final segment of this episode. It is the eShop Gem of the Week, a chance to give some shine to a game that might not otherwise get mentioned on this podcast. Normally, I would throw this to the guest, but I asked you before we started recording, and you're like, no, I don't really have one. So I'm going to
Sorry.
take the lead on this one. No, it's good. I actually have a list of games when people do not have one themselves that I can bring up. And this is one that I was like looking through my list, and I was like, all right, what can I talk about that I haven't talked about on the show before? And I don't know if you even heard of this game, Wes. It is called The Swords of Ditto, Mormo's Curse.
For some reason, Swords of Ditto sounds familiar, but I've definitely not played it, and I could not tell you what it is right now. So this is a hidden eShop gem.
It is a roguelike game, and it is basically a top-down Zelda game, like that type of style. Very like cutesy visuals, and essentially the story is like there's this sorcerer who's put a curse on your land, and you have to venture around with the goal of defeating him, and like you have to go through like dungeons to earn special powers, and then you go and challenge Mormo, who is the final boss. And at any point, if you die on your journey, you start over and you're reborn as like the next hero of legend. And based on your success or failure, the world is either more or less corrupted by this curse. So you
That
have
sounds
to like,
awesome.
yeah, and then like you get certain upgrades and powers and everything, and it plays very well. My only critique, really, if I recall correctly, because I reviewed it back when the game came out, and I think it was 2019 when it came out. My biggest critique was it got a little repetitive after playing through so many different cycles. But overall, I had a very good time with this, and it's only $15 if you do want to check it out. It's a very fun game, especially if you like top-down Zelda games. And
Art style is really cool too. It's not what I thought it would. It's like reminds me of Grindstone.
yeah, very kind of like animation inspired.
Yeah, like Cartoon Network style.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Swords of Ditto, Mormo's Curse. It is available on Switch and I think every other major platform if you want to check that out. I don't know if it's on any of the subscription services, but if you want to buy it on Switch, I would not be surprised if it goes on sale quite frequently, given the fact that it's 6 years old now. But at $15, it's not that much of an investment if you do want to check that game out. But yeah, I would recommend it. But Wes, that wraps up this episode of All Things Nintendo. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. As you know, my Patreon and the associated Discord server are the best ways to get any questions or comments in, but you can also get in touch with me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com or hit me up on Blue Sky or Instagram at Brian P. Shea. That is also my YouTube channel name, and if you would subscribe to my channel, it would help me out a lot. Wes, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at I_am_Wesley_. Very annoying. You can also probably just search like Wesley LeBlanc and find me. And I'm on Blue Sky at Wesley LeBlanc as well. I don't use Twitter anymore. I'm still on there, I guess, if you wanted to follow me, but I don't use it. And yeah, Blue Sky is kind of like my main primary place to talk and become friends with me. If you have a Gyarados EX, please, and be ready to trade it to me because I will be needing that come Wednesday next week.
Well, that is our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Before we wrap up this episode of All Things Nintendo, I just want to give a special shout out to the $10 patrons to the All Things Nintendo podcast. Abdullah, Adam Scott, Alec Acanino, Alex Stadnick, Andy Junkins, Ben Richland, Chaps My Ass, Dan Norman, Derek Sigmund, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jackal, Jason Thompson, Jawar Hello, Jill Grote, Johnny Five, Jordan Sloat, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, Justin Childress, Cody Gibson, Creeper207, Mad Genie Confused Koala, Megan S., Nintendo 101, Pratable, Rob McCann Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sousa, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, Tux DC, Wham Bam Sam the Gaming Man, Zach Marcus, Zachary Pliggy, and Zek3 Sword Sama. Thank you so much for your continued support of the show. You make this show possible, and I appreciate you so much.